Private Detective Deborah was doing some shopping at the mall. Suddenly she heard people arguing. The woman went there and saw a stressed shop assistant and several people crowding him. The poor man had found a smartphone and made an announcement, and now several people claimed it was their phone. One man said the phone must have slipped from his bag. A young woman said the gadget belonged to her, and an older woman shouted it was her husband's device. That's when the phone rang. For some reason, the shop assistant handed it to Deborah. The woman glanced at the screen and immediately gave the phone to the man. How did she understand whose device it was? Deborah saw the word wife written on the screen. Emily has 2 glasses filled with water. In the first glass, the water is heated up to 100 degrees. In the second glass, the water is cooled down to minus 100 degrees. The girl drops 2 coins in the glasses at the same time. Which coin will reach the bottom faster? It'll be the coin in the glass with the warm water. The coin in the other glass won't sink at all. The water there is frozen. Jacob and his brother Jack were walking along the street. When they passed a grocery store, Jacob pointed at a young woman and exclaimed, "Oh, my niece is over there." His brother answered, "Oh, right, but it's not my niece." "How come?" The young woman is Jack's daughter. Ashley had a boyfriend, Mark, who was madly in love with her. Unfortunately, the woman didn't love him back. Once, she decided to leave him. Ashley knew Mark wouldn't let her go easily, so she ran away. But Mark was a very rich man and could find her almost anywhere. She had to be careful. 1 week later, Ashley was sitting in her hotel room when she heard a knock at the door. When the woman opened the door, she saw a man. She had never met him before. The stranger apologized. "Oops, I'm sorry, my bad. I was sure it was my room." He then turned around, went down the corridor, and disappeared in the elevator. Ashley rushed back into her room and started to pack her things. She instantly knew Mark had found her. How did she figure it out? No one will knock on their own hotel room door. It was Mark's man who was looking for her. The faster you run, the harder it is to catch this thing. What is it? It's your breath. David and his wife Jessica moved to another town. The place wasn't big. For the locals, new people coming to live there was a big deal. That's why, the next day, the couple's curious neighbors came to say hello. Karen introduced herself and said she was sure they'd become great friends. She had even cooked cupcakes for David and Jessica. Elderly Mrs. Latham told the newcomers she'd been living in the town for almost 80 years. Betty was extremely excited. "A man's come to live in our small town. And so good-looking at that. Awesome news." 2 of the neighbors seemed a bit creepy, and only one looked normal. Who was it? Karen had decorated her cupcakes with something that looked suspiciously like eyes. Betty is too enthusiastic about David. As for Mrs. Latham, she is sure to know lots of things about the town and its inhabitants. She can be a useful source of information, and she cooked them some soup. Brandon's wife told him to cook several eggs, but the man had to boil them for exactly 2 minutes. She left her husband 3 hourglass timers for 3, 4, and 5 minutes. How can the man boil the eggs for exactly 2 minutes? Brandon waited until the water started to boil. Then he turned over the 3 and 5 minute timers. When the 3-minute timer ran out, he dropped the eggs into the water. And when the 5-minute timer ran out, he had his perfectly boiled eggs. It was the first time Eric sailed his brand new yacht. But the man seemed to be out of luck that day. A bad storm sank the yacht, and Eric hardly had any time to make it to the surface. Half conscious, he ended up on some beach. In the morning, the man realized he was stranded on a tiny, uninhabited island. No radio, no cell phone, no means of communication whatsoever, and the island had no trees to make a smoke signal. On the third day, Eric noticed a small plane circling in the sky over the island. Were they searching for him? But the aircraft was flying too high, and the pilot couldn't see Eric. And still, the man did something, and soon he was picked up by a rescue helicopter. How did he attract the pilot's attention? Eric picked up some stones and used them to write SOS on the sand. Helen lives in Singapore with her husband Dennis. Once, she tells her husband she wants to visit her aunt who lives in Italy. Dennis doesn't mind, but he asks his wife to send him a photo as soon as she gets to Europe. When Helen lands in Rome, she sends Dennis a selfie. Under the picture, she writes, "Ciao from Italy, I've just arrived." After looking at the photo, Dennis realizes his wife lied to him. How did he know? In the picture, the clock on the wall shows exactly the same time as the clock in the kitchen, which is in Singapore. If Helen was in Rome, the clock would show a big time difference. One day, Christopher decided he had to develop his logical thinking skills. The guy found a tutor and started visiting him to have private lessons. But this teacher had one interesting habit. Closer to the end of each lesson, he always gave Christopher several riddles. The guy wasn't allowed to go home until he solved them. This Friday, the first riddle went like this. How can you make 6 into an odd number? Tricky. How? He removed the letter S and got IX. That's 9 in Roman numerals. But the guy knew it was just the beginning. The next riddle was even more difficult. It's thin, but when water splashes it, none seeps through. When hit, it changes color. It covers an incredibly complex thing, yet it's very easy to flex. What is it? At first, Christopher didn't have any idea. Duh, he'd have to stay and crack riddles till midnight. Luckily, in a moment, it dawned on him. It's the skin. Christopher's tutor was impressed with the guy's progress. "Okay," he said, "one more riddle and you can go home." 3 doctors said that Ryan was their brother, but Ryan claimed he didn't have any brothers. Who was lying? Christopher figured out right away that everyone was telling the truth. All the doctors were Ryan's sisters. Whew, he could finally go home. The morning after a heavy snowfall, Justin went outside and stopped in his tracks. He saw there was twice as much snow on top of his garage as there was on his neighbor's. Still, Justin didn't get surprised or upset. Why? Justin's garage is twice as big as his neighbor's. No wonder it also has twice as much snow. Amy went on holiday to the seaside and met 3 guys there. They were friends, but it didn't stop all of them from trying to impress the girl. In the evening, they all met in a restaurant to have dinner, and the guys started to tell Amy about their adventures. Sam boasted, "I'm a pilot, and I've already traveled all over the world." Larry said, "I once took part in an expedition to the North Pole. It was amazing. I saw penguins and polar bears." Jerry barged in, "And I'm an astronaut. When I was in space last time, I went on a spacewalk. I wanted to see our planet from above, but I was almost blown away by a strong wind." Who's lying to make a better impression? Both Larry and Jerry are lying. Penguins live near the South Pole, and there's no wind in outer space. It's an almost perfect vacuum. Andrew and Gary are twins. They were born just 1 minute apart, and Andrew is the elder of the two. But for some mysterious reason, they celebrate their birthdays 2 days apart once every several years. How is this possible? Andrew was born at 11:59 p.m. on February 28. It wasn't a leap year. So Gary, who appeared just 1 minute later, was already born on March 1st. That's why, during leap years, they have 2 days between their birthdays. A famous scientist went missing. The last time his colleagues saw him, he was in his laboratory. When the police arrived, they found a calendar lying on the man's table. There were several numbers written in pencil at the bottom: 6, 4, 9, 10, 11. The police officers had 5 suspects: David, Sarah, Jason, Betty, and Kevin. Who is behind the scientist's disappearance? It's Jason. The numbers stand for months, and the first letter of each month spells the name of the criminal. So the 6th month is June, and the first letter of June is J. The 4th month is April, and the first letter of April is A, and so on. Smarty pants. A super wealthy businessman, Mr. Carl Jenkins, has been taken and left locked up all alone in a dark room. His phone's almost run out of charge, so he can only write one message. He knows that someone might spy on his phone, so he decided to write a message with a code to a high school friend, John Smith, who runs a detective agency. He remembered that in high school, they would cipher messages to each other, so he used the same technique. The message was this. Can you guess what it means? Back in high school, they would shift one letter to the right each time they needed to write a secret code. To decipher it, you need to go one letter to the left. Their alphabet looks like this. The message is, "It was Eric." Having read the message, John knew immediately who his friend was talking about. Eric is the financial director of Carl's company. He had seen him once at a party a couple of years ago, so he knew what he looked like. John decided to investigate this case himself and help his friend out. He was sure there was something secret in Carl's mansion. Somehow he thought he knew that Eric would have the key to the mansion. The receptionist, Kelly, said he would always have lunch with different business partners at 2 p.m. sharp in his favorite cafe. When the detective drove up to the cafe, he saw Eric, the man with a beard, discussing business with someone. Either of them had a briefcase next to them, and the briefcases looked similar to each other. John was waiting for Eric and the second guy to leave the cafe. They went to the car, got in, and left both briefcases on the back seat. The detective followed them. They left the car in a parking lot, and luckily, they were careless enough to leave the car open. Which briefcase should the detective grab? The one that looks brand new. While they were walking to the car, the detective spotted a few scratches on the second man's briefcase. Both briefcases were locked with a cipher. Not to make the whole thing suspicious, the detective decided not to take it and cracked the code right in the car. Can you help him open the briefcase? The code is 000. The briefcase is brand new, and Eric probably didn't have time to set a code on it yet. Plus, Eric's the one who leaves the car open and unattended in a parking lot, so no wonder he uses a default code for his briefcase. Now that the detective has the key, he heads to the mansion. The front door isn't a problem with the key in hand. The study is upstairs. He's been there before, so he remembers the stairs leading up have a secret. If you step on the wrong stair, you'll instantly fall to the basement and won't be able to escape from it yourself. What step should John mind? It's the one with the slit in the middle. When you step on it, it opens and you get into a dark room with bats and spiders. Yikes! Alright, John is finally at the study door, and Carl would always use buttons to open it. You've got only one try. There are 3 buttons, yellow, green, and blue. Which one should the detective choose if he knows that Carl is a big fan of painting? A combination of blue and yellow gives green, so the door opens. Green light for our detective. He finally reaches the safe with top-secret documents that could help him find out the truth. Obviously, just like any other safe, it's locked with a code. It also has a warning. You can enter the code only once. If you hit the wrong code, the safe locks up forever. He's looking around for a hint, and voila! John is right. On the desk, he sees a note. It says, "Secret code," and has a combination of 3 digits, 3, something, and 1. The digit in the middle can't be seen since there's an ink stain right on it. Can you crack the code with one attempt only? The code is 371. The detective thought the code was used frequently, so the button must have been a bit worn out. He was right. Since he knew the beginning and the end, he only needed to find one more worn button. Alright, now he's got the top-secret documents he needed for his investigation. He looks through all the papers and finally finds something that looks like the document he actually needed. To take it as a hard proof, he needs to find one which is not fake. There are 4 copies. They look almost the same, but only one is real. Can you guess which one? It's the one in the upper left corner. It has a stamp, a signature, and it says agreement. The one next to it looks the same, but it has a spelling mistake. It says agreement. Other copies lack either a stamp or a signature. So the detective takes a closer look at this agreement and sees something about a painting bought at an auction. He suddenly understands that his friend Carl was taken so that someone could sneak into his mansion and grab that super expensive painting. He's looking at the wall with all the paintings Carl collected and realizes that no painting is missing. There are as many nails in the wall as there are paintings. Still, there's something strange about one of them. Can you spot what's wrong here? Even though all the paintings are present, there's one that lacks a frame. According to the agreement, the painting has been recently bought, and an art dealer helped Carl pick it. The expert was an honest man, and he helped Carl make sure all the other paintings in his collection were real. This time, the painting turned out to be nothing but a copy. Why did the expert suggest that Carl buy it? Although the painting cost nothing, its frame was a beautiful and expensive piece of art. The one who grabbed it definitely knew that. Now it's all clear. John has to find both Carl and the precious frame. He goes outside, trying to deduce where the person who took Carl went. Carl is looking at all the tracks on the ground. He needs to follow one of them to understand where to look for Carl. Where should he go? He's got to follow the tracks going to the left. There are 3 sets of tracks here. The first belonged to John's car. The second set belongs to a 2-wheel vehicle, and since the tracks are really thin, they were left by a bike. It seems impossible to take someone somewhere on a bike, so these must belong to a mail carrier who comes every day to bring the letters. The last set of tracks definitely belongs to a large car, so John should follow it. He's lucky and there are no turns, so he's just going straight. Half an hour later, he sees something like a castle. He drives up to it and he sees 3 moats in front of him. Here's the first one, a row full of metal stakes. How can John jump over it safely? There's a small hot air balloon nearby. John has to untie it and light the lamp to take off. Since the next moat is on fire, John thinks it's unsafe to fly over it because the air balloon doesn't fly high enough and the lamp doesn't have enough oil to go on for long. Still, he managed to cross the moat with fire easily. How did he do it? He took the sand from the air balloon's ballast and sprinkled it on the fire, extinguishing it. The last moat was filled with scalding hot lava. It took John some time to figure out how to cross it, but he managed to do it safely. How? There were a lot of stones around him. The lava torrent wasn't deep at all, so throwing stones at it, he made a tiny path to hop on. The castle was rather small inside, so the hardest thing was to actually get into it. When he entered the hall, John saw 3 doors. Above the doors, there was a sign. It said, "One of the doors leads to a labyrinth no one ever escaped. One of the doors is the exit. If you enter it, you'll have to cross all the 3 moats all over again. One of the doors has what you're looking for." When John looked at the doors, he knew immediately where his friend was. Which door did he choose? The handles were made of shiny metal, which looks cool but gathers all the fingerprints. The only door with fingerprints is the one on the left. John opens the door and sees his friend. Carl rushes out of that dark room, and while heading to the exit, they spot a few frames. Which one is Carl's? The rectangular one. The painting was rectangular, and the 2 other frames are square. The 2 friends get out of the castle, get in the car, and head to the police department. There, an officer's waiting for them. They have 3 suspects who could have possibly taken the exquisite frame. Carl and John enter the room separately. Still, they choose the same person. Who did they choose? The man on the right. Carl chooses him because it's the art expert. John chooses him because he saw him with Carl having lunch. Wow, seems like this expert's not going to work with Carl ever again. Okay, you ready? Oliver was walking near the river in the evening when a group of people dressed in black caught him. All of them were wearing masks. Their leader offered Oliver 3 options. They could throw the guy into the sea with hungry piranhas, he could choose to end up in the ocean swarming with sharks, or he could opt for a river with hippos. What should Oliver choose to survive? Piranhas only live in freshwater. The guy should pick the sea with the piranhas. An expedition set up camp in the middle of a desert. They were planning to spend several days in that place, but when they woke up, their truck had disappeared. Luckily, they had enough food to last a week, but no power and little water. But there was more to come. 3 days later, one of the team members disappeared. The leader of the expedition questioned the remaining people. Michael said he had been wandering around, trying to find water. Emily said she had been playing games on her smartphone. Evelyn claimed they had been sleeping all day long to save energy. And Henry said he had been preparing his research paper in his tent. Now, who's lying? Emily. In 3 days, her phone would have already run out of battery. There are 100 books on a shelf. To count off 10 of them, you'll need 10 seconds. How much time you'll spend counting off 70 books? It will take you 30 seconds. You'll need this time to count off 30 books, and the remaining ones will add up to 70. Sophia's sister, Chloe, visited her on Saturday. The women had a meal and talked about their lives. Chloe had been promoted. Her husband had recently presented her a diamond ring, and they were going to have a vacation in Hawaii. Chloe didn't have such amazing news. She only listened to her sister and complained about life. Right after lunch, Chloe felt unwell. She paled and lost consciousness. Sophia called an ambulance. They rushed Chloe to a hospital and hardly had enough time to save her life. It turned out the woman had been poisoned. The police came to Sophia to ask her a couple of questions. She was shocked. "We ate the same food. I cooked chicken and made a vegetable salad. Nothing exotic." After examining the food, the police officers arrested Sophia for trying to poison her sister. But how did she do it? The poison was in the bottle with the salad dressing. Chloe added some vinaigrette to her dish, while Sophia didn't touch the bottle. The moral? Stop complaining so much. A small cafe in Boston is called 9 Lanterns, but there are only 7 lanterns hanging outside. The owner knows about this mistake and can easily correct it, but he doesn't. Why? When the wind took away 2 lanterns some time ago, the man wanted to replace them. But before he could do it, he noticed that more people started to come into his cafe. They told him 2 lanterns were missing, and then stayed to drink coffee. Jackson came to visit his friend Aiden, who he hadn't seen in ages. They had a great time, gossiping and drinking tea. But Jackson had completely forgotten Aiden had one quirk. He loved making up riddles and never let anyone leave his house without cracking 1 or 2 of his newest ones. This time, his question was, "What do you swallow that can swallow you?" Can you help Jackson get home? Hey, it's already late. The answer is water. Jackson was smart enough to know he won't be able to leave Aiden's house after just 1 riddle. True to his expectations, another riddle was waiting for him. What is lower with a head on top than without it? Jackson took his sweet time, but eventually he realized the right answer was a pillow. Could he go home now? Apparently not yet, but Aiden promised it would be the last riddle for the evening. He told his friend, Hannah's birthday is on January 23rd, but she always celebrates it in the summer. Why? Luckily, Jackson had just returned from his trip to Australia. He immediately realized that Hannah lived in the southern hemisphere. There, January is the hottest month of the year. Students knew they would have an exam on Friday, but their strict professor didn't tell them the exact time. When one guy gathered enough courage to ask about it, he got a weird reply. If 11 plus 2 equals 1, 10 plus 6 equals 4. If you manage to figure out the answer, you won't miss the exam. Do you know when the students should meet with their professor? At 4 p.m. 11 o'clock plus 2 hours is 1 p.m. Then 10 o'clock and 6 hours is 4 p.m. James called his wife Mia and told her he would be at home by 8 o'clock. They didn't plan anything special for that evening, But when he arrived at 2 minutes past 8, the woman was furious. Why was she so angry? Mia thought her husband would come home by 8 p.m., but he appeared at 8:02 a.m. the next morning. Uh-oh. Look at these two ladies. They both seem to be filthy rich, but only one of them actually is. Can you figure out who's fake rich? It's the girl on the left. She's taking a photo with a luxury car in the background. But there's someone in the driver's seat, and this person looks rather shocked. One elderly man could only use a public telephone to make his calls. Once the phone stopped working, the man informed the phone company. He waited and waited, but no one came to fix the phone. Several days later, the man visited the company again and said something. The day after, the phone was working again. What did the man say? He said people use the phone to make calls without paying. Look at this picture attentively. What's wrong with it? The pitcher the woman is holding is empty. Then where's the milk coming from? Mark has always been jealous of his friend Liam's achievements. This week, they're both taking part in a battle of wits. Mark decides to do everything possible to win this time. And the first task is to guess the word. It has 7 letters and it is very heavy. But if Mark takes away 2 letters, he'll get 8. If he takes away 1 letter, he'll get 80. What word is it? The first riddle is a success. Mark finds the right word. It's weighty. The next question is even trickier. A man went around the world in a ship, and still he was always inside of land. How is it possible? It doesn't take Mark long to figure out the man was in a spaceship orbiting Earth. The next thing Mark knows, he's locked in a room. Wow. There are 4 doors there. He's entered through one of them, and he can't use it again. The first door leads to the room with high-voltage wires hanging above the wet floor. Behind the second door, there's a water-filled room swarming with piranhas. And the third door hides a room where acid, flesh-melting rain is falling from the ceiling. Which door is more or less safe to enter? Mark opted for the first door and didn't regret it. It was safe because he didn't let his body come into contact with the wires and the wet floor at the same time. It turned out the next task was the last one in this competition. Mark was looking forward to finding out the winner, but first he had to do some brain work. The world's tallest tower is finally finished. It took 5 years to build it. Every next year, the construction doubled in height. How many years did it take the tower to reach half its current height? Four years. If the tower grew twice taller every year, it had to be half of its final height a year before it was completed. And if you're wondering about the results of the competition, it ended in a tie. Duh. Luna has 2 friends, Jack and Owen. On her birthday, the girl wants to go to the movies with the guys, but they don't know each other and Luna's worried they might feel uncomfortable. But there's also another problem. She spent way too much money this month. But if she invites the guys, she's going to pay. Now, she's trying to understand what is cheaper, to invite both guys at the same time or go to the movies with each of them in turn. Can you help Luna? It'll cost the girl less to invite her 2 friends at the same time. This way, she'll only have to buy 3 tickets. If she goes with each of them, she'll pay for 4 tickets. It was a sunny summer day without a single cloud in the sky. The ship was in the harbor. There were many people on the shore. They gathered there to look at the vessel. Suddenly, the ship started to sink. There was nothing wrong with it, and all of its systems were functioning correctly. The weather was fine and the sea was calm. But the ship still disappeared in the blink of an eye. What happened? Well, nothing unexpected. Submarines are supposed to travel underwater. You board a small plane. Nice. You're the only passenger on board. In a few hours, you'll be sunbathing on the beach, sipping something cold and refreshing. But before that happens, you'll face an epic test to see if you've got the kind of survival skills you need to survive in the wild. Count up your right answers and see what it all means at the end of the video. You fasten your seatbelt and fall asleep just before takeoff. Suddenly, turbulence. You wake up from a dream where you were an octopus in an earthquake. The plane's shaking, your luggage falls out of the overhead. This is serious. You strap on an oxygen mask and notice a flash of lightning outside. A second later, you see another flash. But this time, it's your plane's engine. It's on fire. You're falling. The screeching of ripped metal, screams, and then darkness. You pass out. After a few seconds, you open your eyes and find yourself falling from the sky. Okay, get it together. You unfasten yourself from the chair to stop spinning. The first rays of sun appear over the horizon, and down below, you see a dense forest, a green field, and a small pond. By stretching out your body, you can change direction, you can steer. So, where are you going to land or crash? You have 3 seconds to decide. The best answer is the forest. A fall into water from that high up would hurt the same as falling flat on the ground. But tree branches can soften a fall. You plummet into the forest and lose consciousness. Day 1. Awake. Your whole body aches. Fortunately, you're not injured and you can even walk. Those branches saved your life. Yeah, this is a fairy tale. Now, where to? You don't have a map or a compass. Then suddenly, you hear the sound of a river. You need to choose a direction. Here are the options. Walk in a straight line. Find some moss on a tree and walk in the direction it's growing. Find the river and walk along it. You have 10 seconds to choose. Don't go straight if you don't want to get lost and walk in circles. Navigating by moss? Yeah, I just made that up to mess with you. You should go along the river. It'll lead to a pond or a lake, and there might be people there, or a road, or some signs at least. Day 2. You make it to a lake, but there's no sign of civilization. Now what? Maybe head back up the river? Along the way, you pass out again. You wake up and it's cold, so you drink some river water and try to make a fire. You collect dry twigs, brushwood, birch bark, and moss. Oh, sweet! A gas lighter and a piece of paper in your pocket. What's the best way to start a fire? Put the branches in a pile and pour gasoline on them? Put pieces of paper in the branches and fire them up. Make the branches into a triangle, place birch bark under, and light it. You have 7 seconds, and it's getting really cold. Don't pour that precious gasoline on the branches. It'll burn out too quickly, and those fumes are bad for you. The paper will burn off too fast, and the wood won't catch fire. The triangle of wood will let air pass through it. That's the key. Fire and air, a match made in heaven. Get it? Match? Okay. Day 3. You finally get warm, drink some water, and continue along the river. Uh-oh, you haven't eaten anything for 3 days. Gotta get on it. You don't know how to fish, so you go into the forest to find some food. You have a few choices. Berries? They look delicious and seem pretty juicy. Ants, mushrooms. You have 7 seconds. Choose wisely. Ants are the most delicious and safe thing around. You just can't eat random berries or mushrooms. They can be poisonous. Now, how do you get those ants to march right into your mouth? Hey, I can't hand you all the answers. Day 4. A big bear is blocking your path. You shout to scare it away, but it just looks at you. It's not happy. And now it's coming your way. What should you do? Run as fast as possible because bears are big and clumsy. Climb the nearest tree and sit up there till the bear goes away. Lie down in a fetal position and stay absolutely still. You have 5 seconds to make a choice, and it better be the right one. Bears are fast and can climb trees like they're oversized squirrels. The right decision is to pretend to be asleep. The bear will see that you're not a threat and probably will pass you by. Day 5. Heavy rain starts to fall. You need to hide under a tree, build shelter, and make another fire. Which of these 3 trees should you hide under? You have 7 seconds before you're soaked to the bone. The tree on the left is rotten and might crumble at any moment. There's a snake crawling in the tree on the right. Venomous or not, it's not worth the risk. The tree in the middle is perfect. Day 6. Your stomach starts to rumble. Those ants weren't exactly filling. You decide to catch a fish at all costs. Aha! You could use a piece of your clothing as bait, but where can you find a fishing rope? You have 10 seconds for this one. The answer is your shoelaces. They should be enough if you tie them together. After a long day of fishing, you finally catch one. Aha! Sushi! Day 7. Your journey along the river continues. Up ahead, you see that the river splits into 2 smaller streams. Decision time, left or right. This could mean life or not. You have 7 seconds to decide your fate. Definitely the right stream. There are wolf tracks by the left stream. A pack of hungry wild animals? Yeah, no thanks. Day 8. No way, you're saved! In the distance, you can just make out the roof of a big house. You run over and tragedy. The house is totally abandoned and almost destroyed. But you still decide to go in. In the hallway, you see 3 doors. There's a sign with snakes and spiders on the first door. The second door also has a sign, a pit with spears at the bottom. The third door has a lightning bolt sign on it, probably some high voltage stuff going on in there. Which room should you choose? I'll give you 10 seconds for this one. Go for the third door. The house is abandoned, so the power's probably been out for years. You decide to stay the night, rest, and move on in the morning, even though it's super creepy. Day 9. Time to hit the road again. In the house, you find a piece of broken mirror and grab it just in case. You've been walking for hours, but the river doesn't seem to be leading anywhere. Then you hear the most magical sound. You look up. A helicopter! You need them to see you, but there's no time to start a fire. What can you do? The helicopter's about to fly off. 5 seconds, quick! Grab that piece of mirror. You can reflect the sun off it and try and direct the light at the helicopter. Yeah, you've been spotted, but you can't be saved. No. Thunderclouds come out of nowhere and force the helicopter to fly away. Your best bet? Stay right where you are. That helicopter will come back for you tomorrow, hopefully. Day 10. You wake up in a good mood. The rescuers will be here soon. You take off your shoes to wash your feet in the river. Then, a not-so-magical sound. You hear a growl. Two wolves are staring down their noses at you. You start running in a total panic. The wolves start to chase you. They're catching up. There are 3 paths up ahead. The first road is covered in hot coals. The second one is littered with rusty nails. The third has broken glass all over it. Which path are you going to choose? You have 2 seconds. The wolves are coming right up behind you. Your best bet is the hot coals. You're running, which means you won't have time to feel any pain. It might get a little hot, but your feet will be safe. The wolves don't dare run through the coals, but they stay nearby. Great, now the rescuers won't know where to find you. Wait a minute, how did these 3 paths appear in the forest anyway? People made them. You're on the right path. Civilization is near. Yeah, food, water, Wi-Fi. Day 11. The helicopter appears in the sky again. You whip out your mirror and go to town. The helicopter starts to fly down, but it can't land on your side of the river. The forest is too dense. The rescuers are waiting for you on the other side. Quick! 3 logs lie across the water. Which one's safe to run across? You have 10 seconds, so think carefully. The first log looks old. The river might carry it away at any moment. The third log, well, it's a crocodile. You need to cross the river on the second log. You're saved. Next stop, a cool ocean breeze. But what you don't know yet is that there's one more test. You'll be swept far out into the ocean after you accidentally fall asleep on a little boat you rented. But that's another story. Now, let's check out how well you did. 0 to 4 points? You better not go camping without an experienced guide. Hey, don't worry, survival in the wild isn't for everyone. 5 to 9 points? Not bad. If you get lost in the forest, you won't panic. But things might get a bit hairy if you have to stay out there for more than a couple of days. 10 to 12 points. Wildlife is your second home. If things get really bad, you could just camp out in the woods forever. Hey, just never mind that part about falling out of the plane without a parachute.
Carl and his wife Olivia had dinner. They ate the same dishes: French fries, some fish, and vegetable salad. Half an hour later, Carl felt unwell and called the ambulance. But when specialists arrived, he was already unconscious. The man was immediately taken to a hospital. Luckily, doctors had enough time to save him. When they figured out what was wrong with Carl, everyone was shocked. The man had been poisoned. But how could it happen? He and his wife ate the same dishes, but Olivia was perfectly fine. Even more surprising, the next day, the police arrested the woman for trying to poison her husband. How come? Olivia made all the dishes not salty enough and put poison in the salt shaker. Peter graduated from the police academy and began to work as a trainee detective. 1 week after the guy started his new job, he already had the first tricky case on his hands. One of his colleagues was investigating a series of crimes connected with smuggling. She was close to solving the case, but several days ago, the woman disappeared. Peter visited the last location where his colleague was spotted and found a note: 710-57735, 34 5508 51 7718. Peter has 3 suspects: Bill, a manager in an oil company; Todd, a jeweler; and John, a car dealer. Who's the criminal? Peter has managed to prove he deserves his detective badge. The guy turned the message upside down and tried to read it that way. Surprisingly, the letters made rather legible words. Bill is boss. He sells oil. Something went wrong in a super-secret laboratory. There was a leak of a newly developed experimental chemical, and it made several plants and animals mutate in the blink of an eye. Scientists ended up locked in one room with the vicious monsters. One of the researchers managed to figure out how they could get out of this dire situation, but the substance they needed was in another part of the laboratory. The scientists could get there through one of 3 corridors. The first was guarded by fire-breathing crocodiles. Hey, it was an experimental laboratory after all. The second corridor was filled with meat-eating sunflowers with extra sharp teeth. And the third passage was swarming with venomous bees. Which one should the scientists choose? They should opt for the corridor with the sunflowers. Those are plants, and however scary they are, they can't move. Terry and Alice fell in love and started going out, but the woman's best friend Sarah was jealous of their relationship. Alice didn't want to lose her friendship and tried to keep the dates with her boyfriend in secret. That's why she left him coded messages with the places where they were going to meet. That day, Terry found a new note. It looked like this. At first, he was puzzled, but soon enough, he realized where he was going to see Alice. Can you figure it out? Alice told Terry to meet her at the street corner. Patrick called the police. The man seemed to be worried sick. "My wife Victoria took our dog for a walk in the afternoon. Several hours ago, our pooch returned alone. I don't know where Vicky is." The police questioned the suspects. Mrs. Summers said she'd been watching TV all day long. "I was busy delivering the mail," said the postman. "I didn't have time to linger in this area, and I didn't see anything." And Mr. Thomas told the police he'd been working in his home office. The detective knew at once one of these people was lying. Who was it? It was the postman. His sleeve is a bit torn, and there's a dog bite on his arm. Plus, some black fur is stuck to his pants. Victoria's dog probably tried to protect the woman. 3 expensive watches have been stolen from Mr. Brown's store this year. The police can't help the poor man. He decides to hire a private detective. When Laura arrives, she immediately asks for the CCTV footage from January to December. After watching it, she tells the store owner who the thief is. What has she noticed in the video? The same guy came to the store several times, in April, August, and November. And every time, he has a cast on his arm. But no broken bone would need 8 months to heal. Joe had a friend, Randy, who never answered questions directly. Once, Joe sent Randy a message, inviting him to join their common friends in a cafe. Randy's answer was kinda weird. "Sorry, no money. Job in job." Luckily, Joe knew his friend well enough to understand what he meant. But can you figure it out? Randy meant he had no money because he was in between jobs. The next time Joe texted Randy was when he needed some advice. Despite all his quirks, his friend was very good at finding solutions to difficult situations. So Joe wrote, "My girlfriend took my professional camera without asking permission, and then she accidentally smashed it. What should I do?" The answer was bizarre, not that it was unexpected. Give, get, give, get, give, get, give, get. At first, Joe didn't think he wanted to follow this advice, but a bit later, he decided it was the best course of action. What was the advice? Forgive and forget. Dylan was an extremely popular guy in his office. Tall, handsome, funny, and friendly. But there was one thing that made certain people dislike him. The man had a new girlfriend every month. That Friday, Dylan came to work happier than he'd ever felt. He finally bought the car of his dreams. At lunchtime, he went to the parking lot to check in on his new toy. Oh no! His car was a mess, scratched and covered in paint. Dylan went pale and called security. He had 3 suspects, all of them his exes. Andrea said she didn't even know Dylan had got a new car. Catherine answered she'd been preparing a report for their boss and hadn't left her desk. And Mila told the guy she'd forgiven him long ago. Who ruined Dylan's car? It was Catherine. She had some smeared paint on her skirt, and the color is the same as the paint on the man's car. 2 maids work in a small hotel in the mountains. One day, the hotel owner finds out one of them regularly steals stuff from guests, but he doesn't know which one it is. Look at these maids cleaning the rooms. Can you help the owner understand who's guilty? The maid on the right hasn't noticed the ring under the sofa. She might not be a great cleaner, but also not a thief. As for the maid on the left, she's spotted the ring and put it in her bucket. It means she's going to take it for herself after she finishes cleaning. She's the one who steals things. One afternoon, all the money was stolen from the register of a small cafe on the beach. The police have 5 suspects. All of them claim they haven't been to the cafe in the past hour. Look at them closely and try to figure out who's the thief. It's the guy with a cocktail in his hand. He definitely bought it in the cafe. But then, why did he lie about not visiting the place? Police officer Cheryl Adams was visiting her colleagues in another town. She was walking along the river, taking pictures to send to her husband, when a man crashed into her. They both fell to the ground. After helping Cheryl to her feet, the man started to apologize. It turned out someone had stolen his wallet, and he was trying to catch the thief. "I was painting my boat, and my wallet was lying next to me. But then I got distracted, just for a moment. But when I turned back, the wallet wasn't there anymore." Cheryl understood the thief couldn't have gone far. She pulled the man to the nearby pier. There were 4 people there. After looking at them closely, the police officer knew who the thief was. Now it's your turn to figure it out. It's the man who's talking on the phone. There's some green paint on his feet. Julia came to have lunch in her favorite restaurant. She occupied a table near the window and put her bag in the seat next to her. Once the woman gave her order to the waiter, she went to the bathroom to wash her hands. But when she returned to the table, her bag was open and her wallet was missing. The waiter told her he had noticed only one man passing by her table. He was short, with a tattoo on his neck. He seemed to go out to the terrace. Julia rushed there and saw 3 people sitting at their tables. She looked at them closely and soon understood who'd taken her wallet. Who was the thief? It's the young woman on the right. You can see a wig and some men's clothing in her bag. Plus, she's wearing a turtleneck to cover her tattoo.